Rain poured down the porch steps, soaking the woman standing there, her hair plastered to her cheeks, eyes bright with something between fear and resolve. Clara Whitmore. His boss. The CEO. The woman who had once corrected his spreadsheet with a red pen and a raised eyebrow and never once learned how he took his coffee. She stood close, closer than professional distance, and when she spoke her voice shook. "Say that again," she said. "But look at me." Daniel blinked, confused. The sentence he had said over and over that day replayed in his mind. "I can't stay late. I have to get home to my son." He swallowed, stepped aside so she could escape the rain, and said it again, slower. "I can't stay late. I have to get home to my son." She searched his face as if the words rearranged him, and then the weight she'd been carrying finally broke. She let out a breath, sagged against the doorframe, and whispered, "Thank you for saying it like that." Earlier that evening, Daniel had left the office at 5 on the dot, ignoring the looks. He was the single dad in logistics, the guy who never joined happy hour, the one who asked for school calendars weeks in advance. Clara had called after him, voice clipped, asking if the quarterly forecast could wait. He'd said the sentence then, eyes on the floor, expecting the usual consequences. Instead, she'd gone quiet. Now she stood in his doorway, soaked and human, far from the glass-walled office where decisions were numbers and numbers were shields. "I'm sorry," she said. "I shouldn't be here. But I didn't know where else to go." Daniel glanced back at the couch. Eli's small chest rose and fell, a smudge of marker still on his hand. "Come in," he said. "You'll catch a cold." She stepped inside. The apartment smelled like dish soap and microwaved popcorn. It wasn't impressive. Daniel watched her take it in and braced himself for judgment. Instead, Clara smiled, small and tired. "I forgot what homes look like," she said quietly. They sat at the kitchen table while the rain drummed above them. Daniel made tea from the last 2 bags. Clara wrapped her hands around the mug as if anchoring herself. The silence stretched, not awkward, just heavy. "My board wants me to sell the division," she said finally. "Tomorrow they'll say it's inevitable. Efficient. I told them no." She laughed once, humorless. "I've been saying no all my life and calling it strength." Tonight, for the first time, it felt like cowardice. Daniel listened. He was good at listening. Since Eli's mother had left 2 years earlier, he had learned that listening was love with fewer words. Clara told him about her father, a man who'd built something and lost it because he paused once. About learning to be unbreakable so nobody could hurt her again. About the panic that hit when she heard him say he couldn't stay late because someone was waiting for him who needed him more. "I don't have anyone waiting," she said. And suddenly it felt like failure. Daniel took a breath. "It's not a competition," he said. "But if it were, you'd still be winning. You built something. I'm just trying to keep the lights on and make sure my kid believes bedtime stories end okay." She looked at him then, really looked, and nodded. "Say that again," she said softly. "But look at me." He met her eyes. "I'm trying to keep my kid believing that endings can be good." The next morning, Clara stood taller at the board meeting. She said no again. This time she talked about people, about the cost that didn't show up on a balance sheet. It was a risk. It always is, she realized, to say what matters out loud. When the vote split, she won by 1. She texted Daniel a single word, "Thank you." Challenges followed fast. The board didn't forgive. Daniel's position became fragile. Projects he'd nurtured were reassigned. A review landed on his desk with language careful and cold. At home, Eli asked why Dad was sad so often. At school, there was a fundraiser Daniel couldn't afford. Life pressed from both sides. One night, Daniel stayed late anyway. He needed the overtime. The daycare fee had increased, the landlord hinted at a rent raise. Clara found him still at his desk at 8, shoulders hunched, eyes ringed with exhaustion. "You don't have to," she said. "I do," he answered. "That's the other sentence." She pulled a chair up and sat with him, sleeves rolled, and for the first time they worked side by side not as boss and subordinate but as two people stubbornly holding up their ends of a fraying rope. She rearranged budgets, he remagined routes. They found savings where nobody had looked. It was small, but it mattered. Rumors sparked. Clara shut them down with facts and fairness. She restructured teams to allow flexibility. Daniel helped design a pilot schedule that let parents work smarter. Not everyone liked it. There were angry emails and whispered criticisms. Change always reveals who benefits from the old way. At home, Eli crawled into Daniel's bed with a book and asked if Clara was coming over again. Daniel laughed, surprised. "We're not like that," he said, uncertain if it was true. But Clara did come over again. This time at a reasonable hour, rainless, carrying a grocery bag. She cooked poorly, burned onions, and laughed at herself. Eli pronounced the meal interesting and asked her if CEOs slept. She answered honestly, "Not much. But I'm learning." The real test came when the board issued an ultimatum. Sell the division or they'd replace her. Clara spent a night staring at the city, the old fear pacing inside her chest. In the morning, she went to Daniel's apartment and knocked, not at midnight this time, but early enough that Eli was tying his shoes. "I think this ends with me leaving," she said. "And I'm scared." Daniel didn't offer advice. He offered truth. "You taught me that saying what matters out loud counts, even if it costs," he said. "Say it again." "But look at me." She did. She said what she stood for, without armor. Then she went and said it to the board. She left the company by noon. The backlash was loud. The relief was quieter. A week later, a group of investors reached out with something different, a chance to build again, slower, people first. Clara took it. She asked Daniel to join her. He hesitated. Stability mattered. So did hope. They talked late into the night, weighing fear against possibility. Eli fell asleep between them, book open on his chest. Daniel remembered the sentence that had started everything. He said it again, steady and clear. "I can't stay late unless it means coming home to something better." They built something better. It wasn't perfect. There were months when money was tight and tempers were short. But there were afternoons with school plays and dinners eaten warm. There were endings that didn't feel like losses. Years later, when someone asked Clara how it all began, she smiled and said it started with a knock, a sentence spoken honestly, and the courage to look at someone while saying it.